In December 2008, South Korea was engulfed in a wave of anger and despair. From television screens, from the front pages of newspapers, from the heated discussions online, everywhere the same name echoed, sounding like a funeral knell. Cho Doo-soon. Not a man, but a monster. The embodiment of society's deepest fears and anxieties. His name became a symbol of absolute evil, inhuman cruelty, and what was especially infuriating, impunity. His monstrous crime, the rape of an 8-year-old girl, stirred the entire country, forcing people to rethink their familiar notions of justice and security. In the quiet town of Ansan, not far from bustling Seoul, where narrow streets intertwined whimsically with modern districts, a measured, peaceful rhythm of life reigned. The town was proud of its schools, green parks, and cozy cafes, where residents spent their evenings over a cup of coffee. Nothing foreshadowed the terrible tragedy that would in an instant turn everything upside down, forever changing the appearance of this quiet and peaceful place. The girl, whose life was ruthlessly and cruelly shattered, was a very ordinary child. She loved playing noisy games with friends, enthusiastically drew bright pictures, and dreamed of a bright future, which was mercilessly stolen from her. Her name will remain unsaid, to preserve anonymity, as is customary in such cases. She was a perfectly ordinary schoolgirl whose life was irrevocably altered on one fateful day. On the 11th of December 2008, as she was on her way to school, the girl fell into a deadly trap. Cho Doo-soon, a man of 57 years of age, already serving time for other offenses, had been waiting for her near her home. He offered her candy, attempting to lure her into his house, but thankfully, the girl refused. Then, Cho Doo-soon forcibly dragged her into the restroom of a nearby building. There, he committed a monstrous crime that shocked even the most seasoned investigators. The brutality with which he attacked the child was unprecedented. After committing this terrible act, Cho Doo-soon attempted to conceal the evidence, but he was apprehended. At that moment, when the police arrived at the crime scene, Ansan became the epicenter of chaos. The news spread like a wild forest fire, consuming everything in its path. Crowds of people, like a disturbed anthill, converged on the scene, demanding immediate and harsh retribution. Parents, their hearts gripped by icy fear and seething rage, implored the authorities to protect their defenseless children from a repeat of such a nightmarish fate. The media, catching this wave of universal outrage, began to cover the case, fueling the flames of indignation with each new report. The atmosphere grew more intense with each passing day, as if on the eve of a thunderstorm. When the chilling information about what had happened reached the ears of Koreans, the country seemed paralyzed with horror. Social media instantly filled with angry comments, calls for justice, and furious demands for revenge. People unanimously demanded severe punishment for the loathsome Cho Doo-soon. For the first time in the history of Korean society, the topic of sexual violence against children, previously carefully hidden behind 7 seals of taboo, emerged from the shadows and became the subject of a nationwide discussion. The discussion stirred minds, arousing a storm of emotions and demanding a re-evaluation of values. The investigation into this monstrous case proved to be complex and incredibly convoluted. Investigators faced a whole host of insurmountable problems, including an acute shortage of compelling evidence and fierce opposition from experienced cunning lawyers like Cho Doo-soon who were prepared to do anything to defend their client. However, despite all the difficulties, they did not give up, continuing tirelessly to seek the truth and strive for justice, so that the perpetrator would answer for his deeds. Society watched the case, holding its breath. Each new turn of the investigation, each twist in the case, resonated in people's hearts with a wave of the most diverse feelings. From righteous anger to despair, people demanded decisive action from the authorities, calling for tough measures to protect children and prevent the recurrence of such monstrous crimes in the future. During the trial, Cho Doo-soon behaved defiantly. He denied his guilt, insisting that he had been drunk and remembered absolutely nothing. However, despite all his machinations and attempts to mislead, the evidence against him was irrefutable. Ultimately, Cho Doo-soon was found guilty of rape and assault on a minor, but the court's verdict shocked many. Cho Doo-soon was sentenced to only 12 years in prison. The glaring disparity between the heinous nature of the crime and the leniency of the sentence was impossible to ignore. It was like a clap of thunder, igniting a storm of outrage within society. People simply couldn't believe that such a cruel criminal would be released so soon. This served as a spark, igniting mass protests and demands for stricter laws. Immediately after the sentence was announced, a true war for justice erupted across the country. Public organizations and ordinary citizens united in a single surge, demanding a review of the sentence and the implementation of harsher measures against criminals who committed atrocities against children. The young girl, the victim of Cho Doo-soon, was condemned to a long and difficult rehabilitation. She had to endure numerous physical and psychological traumas. For her, a fragile child, the consequences of a crime forever changed her life. She faced unbearable pain, chilling shame, and the feeling that the world around her had collapsed in an instant. She could no longer feel safe, as if everything had crumbled at once. She had to endure long and exhausting psychotherapy to try and cope with the nightmare that left deep scars on her soul. Her family, shaken by the overwhelming grief, desperately needed support, but felt utterly alone in this ocean of pain. Public condemnation, entrenched social prejudices, and the chilling fear of being rejected became another heavy burden weighing upon their shoulders. However, despite this hell, despite all the hardships they endured, the girl and her family displayed incredible strength of spirit. They found the courage to rise, to find the strength to fight for justice, for the right to a normal life, for the chance to heal, and to help other victims of sexual violence who shared their fate. The story of Cho Doo-soon is not just a tale of a monstrous crime committed within the walls of a home. It is a story of inhumane cruelty, of utter powerlessness in the face of evil, and of a titanic struggle for justice in which they were forced to fight. She forced Korean society to reconsider many questions related to child rights, adult responsibility, and the fight against crime. One of the most serious consequences of this case was the amendment of South Korean legislation, the adoption of new laws that, it was hoped, could protect children and prevent a repetition of this terrible tragedy. Following this monstrous crime, the government immediately adopted a series of laws aimed at protecting vulnerable children from sexual violence, as if trying to mend a gaping wound in the nation's soul. The severity of punishment for such atrocities was intensified, and crime prevention measures were significantly expanded. Furthermore, The Cho Doo-soon case, like a clap of thunder, changed society's attitude towards victims of sexual violence. People, as if awakening from a long sleep, began to listen more attentively to this terrible problem, showing more compassion and providing support to the victims. As a result, like mushrooms after rain, numerous organizations emerged, offering assistance to victims of sexual violence, providing them with vital psychological support and qualified legal aid. However, even after all these changes, the Cho Doo-soon case left a deep, unhealing scar in the history of South Korea. It became an ominous symbol of cruelty and impunity, an eternal reminder of the need to vigilantly protect children's rights and tirelessly fight crime. In 2020, as if escaping from a dungeon, Cho Doo-soon was released. This event ignited a new, powerful wave of protests and outrage within society. Filled with fear, people worried that this beast in human form would commit another terrible crime. The authorities took several measures to ensure public safety, including fitting him with an electronic ankle monitor and restricting his movement. At the time of Cho Doo-soon's release from prison, he was 68 years old. He was perhaps the most hated man in all of South Korea. His freedom sparked a wave of fear and indignation as people feared a repeat of the horrible tragedy. During his time behind bars, Cho Doo-soon expressed remorse, but many doubted his sincerity. He claimed to deeply regret his actions, yet his past behavior, all those terrible deeds, offered no reason to believe his words. Immediately after his release, Cho Doo-soon faced many problems. He found himself in complete isolation, subject to relentless public condemnation and harassment from the media. To ensure the safety of the community, the authorities implemented additional strict measures. Cho Doo-soon was strictly forbidden from approaching schools, kindergartens, and any other places where children might be present. His movements were monitored around the clock. But, despite all the precautions, fear did not subside. People were afraid that Cho Doo-soon would repeat his monstrous act. Anxiety lived in their hearts, and in their demands, a certain insistence was heard. The public craved tougher control measures and enhanced protection for children. The case of Cho Doo-soon left a deep scar on Korean society, dividing it into before and after. It sparked a powerful wave of protests, demanding a revision of the law and decisive measures to protect the rights of the most defenseless, children. After Cho Doo-soon's release, the public outcry not only did not subside, but flared up with renewed force. Discussions about the case continued day after day, opinions clashed in furious arguments, and demands for justice sounded louder. The problem of child sexual abuse remained and continues to be one of the most pressing issues in South Korea. Despite all efforts and measures taken, such crimes, alas, continued to be committed. The case of Cho Doo-soon remained forever a harsh reminder of the need for tireless struggle to protect the most vulnerable, children, and to prevent monstrous crimes against them. This tragedy, like a beam of a spotlight, highlighted the flaws in the judicial system and the gaping holes in the system of protecting young citizens. It stirred Korean society, making it ponder a multitude of difficult questions. How could such cruelty happen? Why was the punishment so lenient, flagrantly inadequate to the deed? How could children be protected from a recurrence of such nightmares? Unfortunately, there are and can be no easy answers to these questions. But the case of Cho Doo-soon sadly became a powerful impetus for change. It drove people to unite, to fight for justice, demanding it with all their might. This story, filled with pain and despair, became a bitter lesson for South Korea, a warning that would echo through the ages, a lesson about cruelty, impunity, and the need to protect the most vulnerable. Despite all efforts, preventing the recurrence of such tragedies completely is unfortunately impossible. However, the case of Cho Doo-soon demonstrated that society can and must fight for justice, for the protection of its children. This story is a harsh reminder of the continuous battle against crime and the defense of the rights of the most vulnerable members of society. The name Cho Doo-soon will forever remain in people's memories as a sinister symbol of evil and inhuman cruelty. His monstrous crime is an eternal reminder of the need to protect children and of the relentless struggle for the triumph of justice. This story reminds us again and again that despite all the difficulties, all the trials that fate throws our way, it is necessary to maintain faith in good, in justice. Ultimately, the Cho Doo-soon case became an important step towards creating a safer and more just society. This tragedy must not be forgotten. It should serve as a constant, unsettling reminder of our duty to continue the fight for children's rights and to relentlessly strive to build a brighter future for every single one of us. This is a story of agonizing pain, boiling anger, and a desperate struggle for justice. It echoes back to us, reminding us of the sacred obligation to protect vulnerable children and to tirelessly resist the darkness of crime. This story, steeped in both suffering and hope, serves as a harsh but vital lesson for the entire world, for each and every one of us.